So it's Rabbi Mordecai here, and we're just building in the morning. We're always building in the morning. This is the time to have good ideas. Also, any time of the day, but it's good. The Torah tells us that every morning a man is obligated to play shachrit, right, which is like the morning prayers. And people have different customs around it. There's people who wake up and pray during right as the sun rises. There's people who before they pray, they study, but there's a whole process of going into the prayer. So the concept of the morning experience is so important because it sets the tone of the day. So that's why I have these conversations in the morning. But I want to talk about this idea of manifestation, right? Because it's something that, people talk about. People talk about, I want to manifesting this or manifest that, or I'm manifesting this part of my life. And it's interesting. Most of my life has been in environments where, as we have defined manifestation, you had to manifest. When I was in high school, sports was a big part of my life. You had to get better, you had to learn more, you had to increase if you wanted to be competitive, right? And so that was that. And when I left school, I was quasi going to taking basically college classes at UCLA and working for my dad, right? And so that process of working with my dad, seeing a person who created his own business, and just over the years, I've seen my dad working, and I know we had a family company. He was in the insurance business, but I never knew how it worked, per se. I knew aspects, like I know he had to give presentations and these types of things, but point is, it's like after school, I was going to school and working with my dad, and I did a lot of traveling, with my dad. And I was able to meet a lot of different business people and sit in corporate meetings and this type of things. But the point is the same. The people that were in these meetings, the people, that I was exposed to, my father specifically, they were in a state of manifestation. And I think before I keep going further, maybe we should define what manifestation is from the secular sense. And I want to evolve the concept to a higher level, right, of what manifestation is, right? And so manifestation is having an idea or a goal and completing it, right? That's how it's understood in the secular sense, is that, there's this process of, you have an idea, you have a thought, it becomes an idea, whatever. And then you go through a series of actions and then it manifests, right? So I had a goal of waking up in the morning and, having a nice glass of water, so I get out of the bed and then I walk to the refrigerator and I get some water and I pour it, I drink it, and I manifest it, right? I manifest it. Now, other people have other things. Like they say, oh, well, I want to manifest my business. I want to manifest my brand. I want to manifest, my true identity. I want to manifest healthy people. I want to, manifest, non-toxicity, whatever, you have these phrases that we use today. But the point is saying people have these goals. But the thing about manifestation is that we have to ask our idea, where does that come from? Right? Where does this idea of manifesting come from? Where's this idea of saying that there's a process to experience, right? Like there's a process to it. Like where did this idea come from, right? Because in essence, to say that there's a process of manifestation is to say that there couldn't be, right? There could be the opposite, right? If you're saying that there's a fast car, well then there means that there has to be a creating space for a slower one, right? So to say that there's a path of manifestation, there's a path of not. So the sages teach us the original manifestation happened in the Garden of Eden, right? That it happened in the Garden of Eden, and Adam, the first man, was given this ability to, in essence, manifest his thoughts, his desires, even to the point of his wife. I wish, I'm sure a lot of singles, wish they had that power. A lot of guys, they're out here looking for, they're shoulda, they're bashert, and I'm sure they would love to have that ability of Adam, of just thinking of um, a girl, and then boom, she manifests. You know, he goes to sleep, she wakes up, she says, "Hey, I'm ready to get married." You know, but that's what we're talking about. That was the power of Adam's thought consciousness. That the original man, his original level of capacity to manifest, came from his ability just to imagine it in his head or to have a lack, and that lack would propel a manifestation of something that fulfilled this lack. Right? This is the original level of mankind, right? And this is what the Torah is teaching us. Now, after Adam and Chava fell, then that power of the machshava that Adam Rishon showed, that dynamic it's changed. In this process of evolution to experience, that's when it started to happen. That's when space started to create itself as the way we understand, because we don't understand the thought consciousness of Gan Eden, of the Garden of Eden. We can't imagine what that level was like, that closeness to Hashem, that ability to see reality. That, you know, the sages say Adam Rishon could see one side of the galaxy to the other. This is Adam. Like he could do, I mean, I don't want to use the word fly, but he could travel. He was able to see all the future generations. He was even able to see David Melech, and he gave, you know, it's like sometimes you see someone, you know, doing something great, you know, they're doing something holy, they have a big purpose. And you say, you know what, you know, I want to give this person 10 grand, you know, I want to give this person 30 grand, you know, you want to do that, and you want to aid this person. Adam was able to see the future. He saw David Melech, and he gave David Melech years of his life. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is the level we're talking about. This is mankind. He was able to transcend aspects of his life, and we have to really kind of understand what does life mean from that aspect, and give 70 years to David Melech. So anyway, so it's a lot around it. It's a lot you know, connected to it. It's a lot of things connected to it. But the point is saying we have to understand the dynamic of manifestation as it relates to the plain text, right? Maybe some of the stuff about seeing the galaxies was midrashim, but the plain text clearly shows us that Adam had this koach and the strength in his mind, and this manifestation of his mind allowed him to create reality. And then the midrashim goes into it and explains it in a more vivid level about what they were able to do and the levels, and Chava being able to understand the animals, and you know, all these different things. And so these are very high level human beings, as we would say in today's level, right? And so that level of manifestation transcended. It transformed. It went into this dynamic of processes. This is where we're at today. Okay, we are dealing with a society that understands reality post Gan Eden, right? Post the Garden of Eden, we're living in a society that's in that reality, which is good, which is fine. But the problem with it is, and the challenge is that they have to understand that that's just part of the idea of manifestation, right? There's an idea. So the question is, if we really want to be Torah scholars, we're going to ask the question, well, where did this idea with Adam and Eve even come from? Where's this concept that Adam had this power and this just process of thought consciousness and reality? Where did this come from? Where did he gain such an ability? Oh, it's the first man. You're not allowed to ask that question. Yes, you are. You're allowed to ask that question because there's amazing answers. This is the concept that they speak of called the tetragrammaton, which could be understood and expressed through the idea of the 10 spheros, right? The 10 dimensions, right? Because the 10 dimensions are in essence, how the light force of God expresses itself in this reality that we experience every day, because everything you're seeing is Hashem. Everything you're seeing is Hashem. It's not just when you open the Torah, every single thing is Hashem. You know, I was reading a Zohar, and the Zohar was talking about a person who sins, whether it's in speech or in action, right? And they were saying that even if no one's around, the walls record And they said the walls and the beams record those sins, and those sins are absorbed in the walls of the house, right? You know, stories about boils and these types of things. But the point is saying this is the idea that Zohar is talking about. This idea, right, of the idea of the walls, receiving, this idea. I mean, to the point. I mean, people could go into certain homes and just feel like a really like inspired energy or really negative energy. You can walk into certain offices. Well, why is that? Let's say no one's there. You just walk into a room and you feel a sense of inspiration. You want to dance, you want to be creative, you want to act, you want to jump around. And then there's other rooms you walk into and it's totally dark. It's like, oh my God, get me out of here. I had a friend of mine, I'm not gonna say her name, but she had a really big house in Hidden Hills in Los Angeles, which is where I grew up. And it was just like this amazing house. And she had this really big dog, whatever. But the point is that we would go over there and it was just her and her parents. All of her siblings were much older than her. And so she was like just there with her parents, and her dad was a successful guy in the automotive business or whatnot. And so long story short, I just remember always going to the house and it was always a dark feeling there. Like, it was just always a dark feeling. Like it was just like one of these places. And then I had other friends. I had a buddy of mine. I'm thinking about him, you go to his house and you just want to lay on the couch. I remember growing up. There was like I had three other siblings that grew up in the house. There's five of us. My older brother was older than us by like several years, and so it was really me and the other three. It was four of us in the house, but we were all 2 years apart. So once we got into like ninth grade, everyone else was, only 2 years after that, right? So the thing is like we all had friends. So our house was known as a house that everyone would just come and just raid our refrigerator. It didn't matter. Like the kids' friends, my brother's friends, his friends, you walk in the house, he's in the refrigerator making himself like a burrito or something. You know what I mean? Like that's just how we grew up. So there's different energies that exist in the energies that exist are all everything's an expression of God, right? Everything is an expression of God, and it's so important to just realize that. Like we think God is like the holy things, like, oh, you go to the Kotel, that's holy, you go to Hebron, wow, that's holy. No, everything's God. The breeze that you're feeling is Hashem. The skin that you have what makes us unique is our free will. And it's a whole big discussion on what the free will is. But the point is just saying this is that everything's an expression of God. And so the way that we understand this expression of God is through this concept of the 10 spheros, right? So this light, God expresses his light in this world. And if he expressed all of his light at once, I mean, obviously we know we couldn't handle it, right? Right? We couldn't handle it. And so Hashem, with his kindness and his mercy, reveals his light through stages, right? But the thing is, these stages are interesting because there's 10 levels, and you could say the first three are kind of like this, like upper reality, and they're kind of like, I use the example of, you see those buildings in like Dubai or India, and these buildings are like, 100 stories or something, like some crazy number, right? And the top part of the building is above the clouds, right? So you can't even see the top of the building. All you could see is, below that, right? And so there's a differentiation, but they're still connected. So out of this 10, the upper three levels, and we're just talking about how God disseminates his life. And then we have this bottom 7, right? So everything from the top level, and we'll go through the names, right? But everything from the top level, right? The top 3 level is just a flow of powerful light. And that different light, as it disseminates, it expresses different qualities within that light. All qualities exist at once. Like the first day of creation, everything was created, but it wasn't until these days that came later that things were able to be expressed, right? So the first day of creation, everything that will be created will be created, everything on that first day. When Hashem says V'yahi Or, when he says that, this is the beginning of the reality. And from there, day 2 happened, certain things evolved. Day 3 happened, certain things evolved. Day 4, day 5, this is how things build themselves out all the way to the manifestation of the sixth day, which was man. The seventh day being Shabbat, right? But all these things existed on the first day. So in that same way, we can imagine now God saying, hey, I'm going to put my light through this vessel, and this vessel is going to disseminate to you in stages. So the first level has everything. The second level, right? The second level, just like the days of creation, still has everything, but reveals certain aspects of everything. And it goes on and on and on and on and on, right? And so it's the same thing with this 10 dimensions. That first level has everything, and they call it the crown keter, right? And then it goes into a lower dimension, which is chokmah, and that's like this aspect of wisdom. And to understand what wisdom really means is a whole conversation. And then it goes to a lower dimension, which is this idea of bina. But these three are in this level above the clouds. They're still connected to the seven, but they're above the cloud. They're in the upper levels. Now you have this lower seven, and I'm going to take that lower seven and divide it into 6 and 1, right? So as that light comes down from the upper three, and the last level being Bina, right, which means understanding. Now that wisdom is understood, or that light, right? These are just terms to allow us to understand the quality of how that light is presenting itself. Right, it's like you have like a model, right, and the model is running on the runway, right. It's the model, right, but when that model comes out, the announcer doesn't announce the model's name, it announces the clothes that model is wearing, right, those clothes. Oh, the Christian Dior, season this, Ralph Lauren, Yves Saint Laurent, whatever it is, he's announcing the designer. Right? So in that same way, but it's the same model. So it's the same light, but as it disseminates, we're announcing that quality. And that quality is how it's expressing itself. So understanding is a level that it goes into this bottom seven or lower seven, which is Hesed, kindness, Gevura, like restriction, limitation, Tiferet, balance, central column, Netzach, perseverance, strength, Hod, deep insight and clairvoyance, Yesod, which is foundation, the accumulator, the unifier, and then you have Malchut. Okay, so the word Malchut means kingship. It means like the Malchut is the way that things come in, like the authority for things to manifest, right? Things manifest. The king says, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, but the king has advisors, right? So there's a lot of advisors that the king is talking to. And after that, the king says, okay, this, and this, and then those things manifest. So the advisors will be these upper levels of light, right? And these upper levels of light come down as a stream, but then they come to this level of Malchut, which is the receiver. This is the king. It receives all the information, and it takes all this light and it manifests it, it projects it, it creates it out in the world. This is what this light does, right? And so this dynamic of this seven is broken into 6 and 1, and the 6 is a continuous stream of light, right? Like you see the people going down the water slides, it's a continuous water light being bestowed into this world, and then it's captured at this level called Malchut, which is this level of kingship, which manifests and creates and builds from this light, right? So we could understand in a way the queenship of a woman, right? Like women are the vessel, they receive from their husbands who were receiving from the creator, right? So in essence, the woman is receiving from the creator and her husband is being a vehicle for that process, right? That's what this process is. So she receives this information, and she says, okay, so I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do that. It's like you think about it, like, maybe there's a Mefarshim on it, maybe there's a Mefarshim on it I haven't seen, but like Zipporah, for example, right? How did Zipporah know to circumcise the kids? Like, what does she know that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if she knew before, if she just knew automatically, why didn't she already do it, right? Because the whole context was that Moshe Rabbeinu was in danger, right? Hashem was going to enact a din on Moshe Rabbeinu, right? And so Zipporah, seeing this or experiencing this or having this understanding of what's happening, went and immediately circumcised the children. So the question is, where did she get that information from? You know what I'm saying? Like, where did she get that information from? Because if she knew it was a life-threatening situation, I mean, obviously you'd be preventative, right? You would be, this is the woman who was bringing him, the Madrasim said he was like in a prison type situation for a period of time. Zipporah was the one bringing him. Like, I mean, she's aware, you know what I'm saying? So if she knew then ahead of time that this was save my husband's life or protect him or protect our family, she would have circumcised him days before, weeks before, right? So the question is, why, where did she get that knowledge from? I'm saying, I'm Darshan's, my personal kiddush, is that it was the wisdom of Moshe that was inside of her that allowed her to enact the Torah, to enact this tradition of this. And the traditions of his people were so important that if he went outside of the traditions of his people, he would die. And so Zipporah understood that. She saw that message, that Moshe had to stay in his traditions, that Moshe had to stay on this path. And so she took it upon her own self to make sure that happened by administering the circumcision, right? Which is an interesting thing, women getting circumcisions, versus what we have today. Anyways, the point is just saying that this is this natural wisdom that's there, but this comes from a receiving component. Moshe Rabbeinu, the wisest man, I mean, I don't say the wisest man, but he was the highest level of a human being on planet Earth during that time. And she, through marriage, was receiving that light. And so she was able to bring down information that was not even taught to her in the oral sense, right? It was embedded inside of her, right? She received that genetic information going all the way back to Abraham Avinu, right? And so this is what we're saying in terms of that light coming down. So over here, what we're saying about manifestation, right? I'm saying there's different manifestations, right? So, and I'm using Adam as a pendulum to understand that. There was a time where Adam was able to manifest through the concept of thought. Then there was a time of manifestation after his disconnection from Hashem. There was this process of the processes, right? I'm using that as an understanding, right? One is thought creates reality, one is the labor creates reality. One, there is no labor, another, there is labor, right? But the process is either way, the goal is for the end goal to be experienced, right? And so I'm saying the world that the secular world is holding by right now, not understanding why, they're understanding the idea of processes. So all the people that we learn from that teach about manifestation and manifesting our goals and manifesting things, they are speaking from a frame of secondary Adam at his lowest level, right? As were us, the people with the Torah, the people that have a ruach that's over the nefesh, right? The people of the ruach over the nefesh. I think that's a way to kind of start describing us personally. But the point is just saying that that person who has a ruach that resides over the nefesh, that person can go to his original or her original state, which is in the Garden of Eden. That original state before the fall, we can go back to that level of manifestation. Now let's try to understand what that means, this level of manifestation. What do you mean? Mordecai, are you saying like all of a sudden I'm going to be able to say, hey, I want a burger and fries, and then I'm going to close my eyes and the burger and fries are going to come on here? come on my table. The Malakim are going to bring the burger and fries. Oh, I need someone to pay my bills. I need to pay my rent. Mordecai, what? The Malakim is going to come and drop off, the check from God. The stork. Is that what you're saying? I'm saying let's go even higher than that. Let's go even higher than that. When we're talking about manifesting, what are we really talking about? Let's talk about from the secular sense, right? The people who believe that the world only exists on processes, right? That you can't just manifest immediately. That process, those people, everything that they desire, everything that they want, if they wrote down what it is that they wanted, whether it was $1 billion, whether it was being the most powerful person in the world, having all the wealth of the world, having all the beautiful women in the world, whatever it is that they want, right? The root of that motivation is to connect to an experience of energy. They want to connect to a dynamic of energy. That's what they want, right? The guy who wants to have relations with all the beautiful women in the world, this guy, what does he want? He wants the light. He wants the light of that energy, of the fulfillment from the orgasmic and the connection in the exchange of energy, all that. He's connecting that to a holy connection to God. He may not say that. He may not come to you and say, "Oh, you know what? I want to have intimacy with the 100th most beautiful woman in the world, and I'm doing it because this is the way I perceive to connect to Hashem." He's not saying that. He's not saying that. He just wants to do it, right? He just wants to do it, and so this idea of being able to understand the root of our desires. No one talks about that. Someone says, "Hey, you know what? The kid tells you, I want to be an astronaut." You never ask a kid why he wants to be an astronaut. And even if you ask him why he wants to be an astronaut, he's going to say, "I want to go to space." And if you ask him, "Well, why do you want to go to space?" "Oh, because, it seems like it's fun there, or I'm interested in it, or I'm curious to it." And then you ask him, "Well, why do you think you're curious about it? Why do you think you're curious about it?" Eventually that kid's going to tell you, "I want to learn, I want to know what the infinite source is. That's why I want to go to space." Or a kid says, "I want to be the best basketball player. I want to be the president of the United States. I want to be the king of the world." What is he really saying? What is he really saying? You think about Yosef Asadik's dream when he was a kid. What did he say to his brothers? That they're going to bow down to him, right? They're going to bow to him, and so are the stars, right? But we understand this, and I may be jumping a little bit, but we understand that Yosef Asadik represents the level of Yesod, because every different dimension of that 7, right? Each one of those 7 that we talked about, each one of them also has a certain character inside of the Torah that represents that area, that level of revealment of light, so we could understand it at even a more personal level, or even a more have even more of a personality, right? So they have names, and these names give us insight to the quality of this light. But then we even have characters. So Hesed, for example, which is the top of the 7, right, is Abraham. Abraham is Hesed. So we understand the kindness of Abraham. We understand through this level of Hesed, which is kindness. So Abraham expresses that. So many of the things that we read in the Torah, we could read it as Abraham, or we could read it as the energy of Hesed that's expressing itself through this Hebrew combination called Abraham, right? But nevertheless, the point is saying that this dynamic of Yosef connects us to the level of Yesod. That's what he represents. Now, Yesod is an interesting level because you have it's when you look at the bottom, when you separate 1 through 6 and you separate the 7th, because you're saying the 7th, which is Malchut, has a different quality. It's a vacuum. It's vacuum. It's very similar to the female reproductive organ. And the first six is connected to the male reproductive organ, right? And so that connection to both is a revealment of light, right? So we even have it on a physical level and even on the spiritual level. So on the spiritual level, there's light, and then there's a vessel that receives this light, right? And so Yosef Hasidik, in the level of Yesod, in that seven, he represents the accumulator, right? It's like sometimes, they have these like kind of like these machines that like gather water, right? Like it's raining outside, they gather water, and it's like maybe like a pool or big plastic, base, and it basically receives the water, and it takes that water and it puts that water through a process, and it purifies it for us to be able to drink it, right? So Yosef is the accumulator. Yosef is the accumulator of all the upper lights that have come down. He accumulates. He is the level right before Malchut, right before manifestation, which is a different type of quality. Yosef is giving over, like the male reproductive organ has a male reproductive organ shares, and it's giving to Malchut, which is like the female reproductive organ that receives, right? And so this light, which is the male seed, is being transferred, right? So this idea of the light that's coming down from this upper world is being given over into this place of Malchut. So when you look at Yosef's dreams, Yosef's dreams were about people bowing down, right? It was about everyone acknowledging him. But maybe what he was talking about, maybe we could learn it, that he had a desire to be with Malchut, because that was the kingship. It wasn't that he was the king, it's that he had a desire to experience the king, which means the desire to experience the manifestation of the light that he was supposed to accumulate and give over to Malchut, which is Yehuda. He was supposed to bring together the upper lights and give them over to Malchut. This is just Yosef and Yehuda. And I always wondered why in the Torah that it switches from the stories of Yosef into the stories of Yehuda with Tamar. And I'm like, wait, where did that come from? Like, why are they, like, was this like a TV show? Like, what's going on? No, it's showing Yesod and Malchut. That's what's happening right there, right? And so this idea of this light coming down and manifest, is what we call in the spiritual world, in Torah world, the world of the Ruach, the people who have a spiritual soul. This is the way that we understand manifestation, because manifestation is connected to physicality, but it's not limited to. Meaning that once I decide that I want to do something, I don't have to wait for the world to acknowledge it, to experience the pleasure from that action. I don't have to do that. I can decide within myself. That this light through this action is now coming down and from Hashem. And that light is slowly filling my vessel. It's like, it's like somebody like, when a person is going through a conversion process, right? For different people, some people it takes 2 years, some people have heard longer, some people have had it much shorter, based off of different situations. And the thing is, on my personal path, it was all about the step-by-step becoming something unbeknownst to myself prior. Like every day I was learning, every day I went to tefillah, every day I put on tefillah, this is before I converted. Every single stage on that way, I became something different. And you could say what happened was that every day there was a new drop of light that Hashem put into my vessel. And that drop of light that he put into my vessel changed me 360 than I was the day prior. And I can say, Baruch Hashem, that is still happening to this day. The person I am right now as I speak to you, in Jerusalem is not the person that existed in Jerusalem this time last year. And they were both great people. So the question is, when do I start experiencing my success? Do I experience it after I convert? After I go into the mikvah, after I do bris milah and then I go into the mikvah? Is that what I'm waiting on? Or am I receiving the light of this day that God is giving me, that's allowing me to experience life in a way that I never was able to do before? Where am I holding at? I'm waiting for the process of the manifestation, or is the goal a process to experience a series of manifestations, many manifestations, meaning that the light of accomplishment I've received today because I'm a different person I am today. Yes, there's a long-term process of having a bris milah and going into the mikvah and saying bracha and all these different things that's going to allow this neshama to fully come out, the ruach of this neshama to come out of the ground as budding roots coming out from the soil during the process of the spring. In that same process, my soul is now coming out. My soul is now revealed. The ruach of my neshama, the neshama of my neshama, the chaya and yechida of my neshama. All these levels are now coming out. The nefesh is now playing a different role. I'm changing. So do I have to wait to the highest level of my change to celebrate? Or do I do it every single step of the way, that every day is l'chaim, every day is Hazacha Baruch, every day is Baruch Hashem, every day is Hashem, I appreciate you. Hashem, I love you. Todah. Todah Hashem. Every day, every moment. Or am I falling on the stages of the secular world that says that these are all the stages that you got to go to experience success and greatness? They put it in a capsule. They put it into a bowl. And he says, we give you access after you do this, this, and this, and this. Then you can become happy. We're like, whoa, how did you become in charge of that? We're talking about light that's disseminating from the heavens. You have nothing to do with that. You can't stop that. You have no ability to influence that. Only I determine that. And that light is coming down every step I go. They say every so many, amos here, you take a step in Eretz Israel, it's like it's a mitzvah. What's being said? Every step, there's an aspect of light that because it doesn't say every step. It says every so many amos, 4 amos, whatever it is. So many amos happen, and that creates, that's a mitzvah that I can take with me to Olam Haba, to the next world. But I have to have kavanah, obviously. I can't be walking the streets as a low life, because there's an upper Yishalayim and there's a lower Yishalayim. There is a high upper Eretz Israel, there's a lower Eretz Israel. These things exist in parables. And so in order for us to receive the benefits of living here, we have to combine the upper and the lower worlds. We have to look the part, and we have to have the kavanah as well. These things come together. So if we're saying every 4 amos, there's an aspect of a mitzvah being created, that means every step that I take is going towards this process of 4 amos. And that process of 4 amos creates the mitzvah that I take with me for the rest of my life. But it comes in stages. Right? It comes in stages. And so what we're holding at is saying that these stages of steps is this aspect of Hashem dropping a little bit of light into every movement that we're making in Eretz Israel. And I'm saying that same exact thing. Every single day, we grow a little bit, we change the course of our entire life. Every minute that we think only about Hashem, I've been thinking about this idea of What does it mean to keep Shabbat? Right? If we're saying that in the next world that we're going to be judged on our makshava and not our maisa, meaning that the actions we do are already written down. We already know what those are. We have to go to the next world and go through a process of a court on our makshava, our thoughts. This is what the sages of the Zohar say, it's our thoughts. So if that consciousness of thought, when we talk about this idea of breaking Shabbat, doing malacha, if we're saying that aspect exists, then we for surely can say maybe the idea of not thinking about things related to Shabbat can also be a form of breaking Shabbat on a high level. I've never heard anyone say this. This is my personal thought of keeping Shabbat in the mind, not just keeping it in the body. Meaning, I'm not going to do this malaka, I'm not going to do this malaka, I'm not going to do this malaka, or even maybe I may not talk about certain things, but I'm saying having Shabbat in a way that your mind now becomes like a Beis Hamikdash. That the mind is only rooted in Kedusha, nothing else. It only thinks about Shabbos, the greatness of Shabbos, the depth of Shabbos, how deep Shabbos is, the connection to Shabbos, words that bring you closer to Shabbos, talking about words of Shabbos, learning Torah, understanding the mitzvah of learning Torah on Shabbos, thinking about the malakim that are created through the limud Torah on Shabbat, understanding that the food, the holiness of oneg of Shabbos, the levels of oneg and what oneg means in Shabbos, all these things, and completely putting your mind in that place into Havdalah. It's not easy. I tried it. I failed within the first 10 minutes. But the point is saying that you get up and you keep going. Right? Recently, I was like, oh, the Makshava of Shabbos. I was thinking of this Erev Shabbos as, my wife lighting candles. And I'm just thinking about the Makshava of Shabbos, right? And so I was thinking about, and the next thing you know, I'm starting thinking about this thing with business next week. I'm like, oh my God, But the point is just saying, I got up and I kept going. But it's a muscle. And I believe that muscle that we can develop by focusing our minds on Shabbat is the mechanism to cure anxiety. Once the Jewish people cure anxiety within them, that vibration will go around the world. Where do we get this from? We get this from Sarah Meinu giving birth. We get this from Avraham and Al-Kela Yitzhak. Right? They did things and it changed the world. It changed the way people saw things. The Jewish people living Mitzrayim changed the whole world forever and ever, ever. African Americans drew from the strength of the Jewish people in the Exodus, and in the Tanakh. They drew from that for inspiration to deal with their levels of slavery. The civil rights movement drew from the stories of the sages and the Psalms and the songs of perseverance and endurance. They used that to create the civil rights movement, would change the world. That's a byproduct of Klal Israel. You can argue some of them are even descendants. But the point is saying that this idea of drawing down light, this idea of understanding that every stage that we take is a complete transformation of the whole world. Every mitzvah that we become closer to is a complete transformation to the world. Like getting deeper into Netilat Yadayim. That first of all is one of my favorite mitzvahs. By the way, I've talked about it before publicly, but I'll say this, one of the things that's so powerful to me is when you wake up in the morning and you say Netilat Yadayim and you envision each of the words of the bracha. You envision it in your head. You close your eyes and you see that Baruch Atah. You see it clearly. Al Netilat, Netilas, whatever. But the point is to say the seeing these words in your head. I'm telling you, it's like the light of Netilat Yadayim, that light of purity that comes and removes the klipa that we connect to, that tuma that we connect to when we're sleeping. Right? The spirit of defilement, when our soul leaves our body, and so there's an aspect of death, and that aspect of death that we have because our soul leaves our body, there's a tuma attached to that aspect of death, and it's on our fingertips, it's on our hands. Every time you go to sleep and your soul goes up, there's an aspect of death that you are experiencing. It's the 60th of death. And so in the same way, when we go to a gravesite, we wash our hands when we leave because there's a tuma that exists. amongst the dead bodies, except for Siddiqim, that tuma, when we go to a cemetery, we wash our hands because there's an aspect of impurity, of defilement that exists on the dead carcass of the body, right? So that's through complete death. That's through complete death. Over here, we're saying sleep is a 60th of death. Is a part of death. So the part of death that we experience every night, every time we go to sleep, we get an aspect of that tuma. So we wake up in the morning and then we bring that light into this world to remove the tuma. It's not like we're just saying some words, abracadabra. Okay, we're not doing that. These are codes that bring in specific light. Al netilat yadayim, the raising of the hands, is this idea of Hashem purifying the hands as we raise them. And that light of the purification of the hands is a light that comes through those Hebrew letters, those shapes that are emanating God's light into this world. This is what Al Natilat Yadayim is. So the closer we become to a mitzvah, I'm just using one example. Hopefully I gave you a chizuk to be able to go deeper into, that mitzvah, Al Natilat Yadayim, or other ones. We were even gifted by organization a copper cup, right? And it was a gift. And the copper cup is so powerful. Copper itself is a connection to Tiferet, bronze, copper. They're connected. They're in the same mineral kingdom. That aspect is connection to Tiferet, which is a connection to Yaakov, which is connected to the idea. Like I went to Marat Metpelach yesterday, and I remembered the Zohar that says that we don't understand the level of Yaakov. And it says, what do you mean we don't understand the level of Yaakov? Yaakov was at a level where Hashem went down into the darkness with him. He didn't send Malachim. He went himself. And he brought all the angels, and he brought all the universes, he brought all the galaxies. He brought that down into Mitzrayim with Yaakov. This is the level of Yaakov. This is the greatness of Yaakov. And Yaakov represents this concept of expression of Tiferet. And this aspect of Tiferet is this aspect of the statues or the foundation that holds up Abraham and Yitzhak. They manifest in their highest level through Yaakov, through Tiferet. So as we're saying that there's two ways to understand manifestation. There's a secular world's understanding, which is at the end process, which is after the fall of Adam, and then we have the state before, which is living in a state of manifestation. So as we build on this idea, there's so many more levels to talk about manifestation, but at least we have a foundation on starting this series of this conversation of how to manifest in our life. And the manifestation starts by understanding and appreciating the details. And once you appreciate the details and you appreciate what you've done and what you've grown, even just a little bit, it changes the world when it comes to Torah. Now, in other things, okay, fine. Maybe mathematics, maybe some other types of science. You learn a little bit more, it's not such a big deal. But in the Torah, one change of behavior, one change of where a person could have said something that wasn't true and said, I'm not going to allow my son